Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Managing Partners Podcast. I'm Kevin Daisey, and I'll be your host. Today, I have an awesome woman on the show. She's got a cool coaching business, an awesome background, and I'm excited to have her on. I was recently on her show and excited to have her on my show to share with you all today. So, Davina Frederick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm so happy to be here. We had such a wonderful conversation on the Wealthy Woman Lawyer podcast that I'm glad that we can continue chatting for a while.
Yeah, we did. And, you know, our conversation was unique and probably off of what you even expected, and which is like my favorite. So we just kind of went on some tangents and had a good
Yeah, it
time.
was great.
So,
It was great. I loved
yeah.
it.
So Davina's actually in Colorado, but she's from Florida. She'll talk about that in just a second. Um, but she's new to Colorado, I guess, if you will. But before we get started, I like to always tell people to go check her out, check out her website. You can go to wealthywomanlawyer.com. That's wealthywomanlawyer.com. If you're listening, pretty straightforward. So, Davina, tell us your background so our audience here kind of understands where you've been. What we really want to dig in today is what you're up to now and how you help.
Right. So I am an attorney. I started my own law firm out of law school, but law was the second career for me. Before I became a lawyer, I worked in marketing for about 15 years as a professional copywriter and professional services marketer for law firms and engineering firms and an ad agency. And then I got an opportunity to go to law school. I graduated law school. I was in my early 40s when I graduated law school. So law was a second career for
Huh?
me. I've been an attorney now for almost 18 years. And I opened my own law firm right out of law school because that was kind of why I went to law school, was to have my own business. I had an entrepreneurial sort of mindset and spirit and wanted to start my own business. And so I did it the hard way. Instead of just starting a business, I went to law school and then started a law firm. And boy, it was a challenge. I grew my own law firm successfully, but I wound up being kind of unhappy after I sort of grew my law firm and we were making good money and I had brought in a partner and we were hiring people, and something just wasn't what I thought it would be. And I was feeling really overworked and overwhelmed and a little bit on the edge of burnout after not, doing it for very long, just a few years. And so I said, I need to take a step back from this and figure out what this is. Is it my partnership? Is it the way I'm running this business? I was the managing partner and a litigator and a therapist for my clients and my employees and the administrator. And I just felt like I was wearing so many hats, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. So I left that partnership and took a little bit of time off. My husband and I owned a high performance fitness training facility, and I worked in that for a while. And then I got back into starting another practice, and this one was virtual. And it was virtual before virtual was a thing. This was way back in 2011, and by virtual I mean phone and email. This is how I ran my practice, and I got into sort of I got hooked up in a coaching program through another attorney mentor of mine, and really learned a lot of sort of the missing pieces of owning and operating a business that I didn't have before, some sort of new information. And I fell in love with coaching so much that I decided that it was something that I wanted to pursue. And so I was operating my law firm and I started a coaching business. And when I started out, I was working with professional service providers because that had been my background. And I had experience in business law, and I kind of combined the marketing business law aspect, and really very quickly became a law firm growth strategist. And because so many of my clients were other women law firm owners who wanted to know how I had done it, so they were reaching out to me. And so I began to sort of narrow my focus to women law firm owners pretty quickly, and really helping them develop strategies to scale their business in a way where they could make the kind of money they wanted to make, that elusive seven figures or more, and do it without burning out. So that's kind of that's about as quick as I can do that story, Kevin. Sorry.
No, that's great. Yeah, interesting story. Kind of how you took that path and step back. I think that's a hard thing to do, and to actually do that, and
Right.
then come back into it once you feel like you got it figured out. I think most of us just go and never take that, or maybe we just implode or get divorced or
Yeah.
whatever. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so the fact that you did pull back and had that time is interesting. And
Yeah.
so you in a nutshell, you help women
I help
lawyers
Yeah, I help
grow
women
their
law firm
business.
owners scale their law firm businesses from 6 to 7 figures, multi 7 figures, and really do it in a way that not only helps them fund the kind of lifestyle that they want, but also have the time to enjoy it. And I think where a lot of law firm owners, particularly I find with women, get stuck and get caught is they get stuck in kind of being a solo. And
Mm.
because there's fear around hiring other lawyers, there's kind of a not knowing, and we want to do things perfectly. And if we can't do it perfectly, we don't want to do it. And we get scared. And can I hire another lawyer? How will I pay them? Uh, will they come in and judge me for my messiness? There's all kinds of thoughts that solos have that prevent them from sort of going to that next level. And so, really, I'm working with women law firm owners to help them develop a strategy for scaling their law firm business to achieve the vision that they hold for themselves and what they want their business to do for them, to really support the kind of life and lifestyle that they want.
Well, I just love it. That the hyper focus, I guess, if you will, on like figuring out who you can help, but narrowing that down and helping women specifically. And there's lots of groups out there that just help lawyers or law firms,
Yeah.
or
Well,
in
and
a
there's a reason.
broad
There's
sense.
There's a reason why I chose that too, because I've had private clients over time. I've developed some group coaching programs, but I still have some private clients. And I did work with men some because certainly I had a lot of connections and colleagues who were male who were facing similar challenges. But for me, I felt like like you said, there were a lot of people out there who were sort of more generalist. And
Hmm.
I also discovered when I started holding in person trainings and workshops and seminars and things that the conversation was different when it was only women in the room than when it was a mix of men and women. And I absolutely love working with men, and I've had some great experiences with some male clients. But I feel like there was a real need here for at the time because I've been doing this for 10 years now, and at the time there just weren't any coaches that were focused specifically on women law firm owners. And I think where women are different is and this is changing some, but women primarily handle the mental load at home as well as work. And um, so we have to think differently about business. Also, you have a lot of women who are having children and raising young children, and they're out because they're going through pregnancy or giving birth or whatever, and it changes the trajectory of their career. And women have a tendency not to ask for help or get support. They, especially high achieving women, they've gotten to where they are because they've worked hard to get there. And working hard is not the thing that gets you to catapult you really to that next level. That's
Yeah.
requires more than hard work. It requires a strategy and a different sort of approach. And I think women's answer to solution oftentimes is, well, I'll just work harder. And it gets to a point where there's no more hours in the day for you to work harder. You need a different strategy. And so that's really why I kind of chose to support other women and be this place where they could be surrounded by other women on similar journey that they are.
I love it. I think it makes a ton of sense versus having a mixed group in the room. It definitely probably changes the dynamics, the questions, the raising your hand for things that you need answers to. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, my wife definitely probably carries a heavier load at home than I do. God bless her. So I can understand that. So I just love kind of like the niche that you've come down into, and how you're helping. I just had a woman attorney on prior to this recording, same day. Probably released at a different time, but one of the things she said when I asked her at the end was, a tip for other young attorneys. And going back to what you said a second ago, the solos and hiring that first person and kind of taking some of those next week steps. Um, that was kind of what the question was around. But she said, you're going to fail at everything the first time, probably, right? Or not going to be a great outcome. And that could be your first hire. Like it could be your first agency you hire, the first coach you hire, the first everything you do probably won't be the best time or best way you do it. And so just just move on, do it and get started because you're going to learn. And that next employee might be twice as good as the first employee. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so I think one of the things is going, hey, I'm going to go on my own. That's a huge step, you know.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like that's where I was when I was 23. But I think the more challenging thing is going, okay, I'm going to have someone else help me. I'm going to get a mentor and a coach, and I'm going to do this right.
Right.
I think that is the most challenging. Maybe not because it's harder to do, but it's the unknown. You don't even know what you don't know. They don't know
Right.
you exist, right? They don't know this podcast exists. They don't know that there's so many great people out there in this legal space that would help them out if they asked. And so I just think that's a
I
challenging
think
point.
And I think nowadays there's a lot more resources than when I started because when I was doing my own law firm, there were a couple of options for sort of coaching, but there were not as many as there are now. And I didn't have the awareness of them if there were, right? I knew of 2 or 3, and it seemed, something out of my realm, like it's something a larger law firm would do. And it took me now I think we're seeing, with social media and podcasting and all these things, a lot more people are coming out and serving lawyers and law firm owners and these audiences and women business owners. So there's certainly a lot more resources now. Just like you said, listening to podcasts alone will really shift your thinking and change your mind. But when you are a solo, it can feel very isolating. And you also, I I think there's this idea when you go work for a big law firm, there's already a team and systems and a structure in place. And when you're a solo, it's incumbent upon you to create that if that's what you want. And the downside of sort of staying a solo is that you really are locked into how much money you can make is really dependent on the number of hours you can put in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, right? And you can't leverage that. There's just so much that you can do unless you start creating products or something like that, and then you need a big audience. But the other part is you can't leave that business. And I know some people who, even though they've hired other people, they still function as a solo because they never elevate to that managing partner
Mm,
mindset and thinking, that CEO level thinking. They still are having to do what I call grade papers. Everything that goes out of the office has to come by them first. They can't, they've got to check everything. They don't trust anybody. And it's because they haven't set up structures and training for the people around them, to support them. So they still are functioning as a solo, even though they may have a team. So when they try to go away for vacation, they're constantly on the email, they're on the phone, they're texting. They can't let it go because they don't trust their team because maybe they haven't done the right training or they haven't hired the right people or they don't have the right systems or whatever it is. So you don't have to just be a solo lone warrior to be functioning as a solo and not functioning as a leader in your business. And that's really the transformation that we're helping our clients make is moving from that solo way of thinking where more of my hard
mm,
work is needed and started to saying, okay, instead of asking how, asking who, right? Who, not how, Dan Sullivan's book, if anybody hasn't read that. Um, but really thinking to yourself, what is my role here? My role here is to be a leader. Ultimately, that's what I want to be. Is I want to be a leader, and I want to attract people who are galvanized around my mission, who are excited about the kind of work that we do, and they want to be a part of this great business that we're growing. And how do I do that? Right.
No, that's yeah, that's spot on right there. I think, especially like you're saying, the acting as a solo, even once you brought in some other folks. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I think back like 4 or 5 years ago, like where I might have had 10, 15 people, and still there was some degree of acting as a solo person. Like you got to be into everything. You got to check everything. You have to trust this or
Everybody got to
that.
run it by you.
Yep, yep, totally. So so yeah, you could have a dozen people and still be that controlling. I would say, like we call it the um, you're the technician, right? You're the one that knew the work. That's why you
Yeah.
started the law firm in the first place, because you like to do the work and you can do the work, and you got to get yourself out of that as fast as you possibly can to some degree.
Right. Right. And
I
I
know
think
plenty of
we get,
lawyers that still
and I think,
practice the huge firms, but they'll pick and
yeah,
choose.
I think that that's the key, right? There's the pick and choose, right? So when we're owning a business, we're doing more than being a lawyer. If we go work for somebody else, we can be a lawyer, and that can be what we do. If we're owning a law firm, now we're saying, in addition to being a lawyer, I'm also going to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, a CEO, a managing attorney, whatever, all these roles, right? And so we get to, but if we do it right, we get to pick and choose what it is that we want to do. For some of my clients, they don't really want to do the day in and day out of being a lawyer anymore. They've done it for years. They don't love it as much, or maybe they only want to take certain types of cases.
Yeah,
And for the regular everyday average things, they want a team running them. And then other people say, you know what, I love being a lawyer. What I really want is to have somebody come in here and help me with the administrative part. I need a chief operations officer, a firm administrator, or somebody who takes on that role. And some people will hire a managing attorney to sort of handle the lawyers and the cases and the flow of cases, and hire a COO to handle all the
CEO.
admin stuff. And then they're functioning as CEO. So there's a lot of different approaches that you could take based on what it is that you want. And I think that's really the key question when we're talking with law firm owners is, what is it that you want to do? Like, what does your perfect day look like on a work day, an ideal day? Some would tell you a perfect day is Bali, right? But they have a different vision for what they want their law firm to be. And some people love taking their laptop with them everywhere and working from anywhere in the world, that lawyer on a beach concept, or lawyer in the mountains concept, or whatever. But for I'm the kind of person that, like, my laptop stays home when I go on vacation. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I want to completely check out. And so, it's asking yourself, what is it that I want my life to look like? And have I created a business that supports the kind of life that I want for myself?
That's a good way to think about it right there. Otherwise, you're gonna be just drowned by all the chaos. You got to
Right.
step back and go, what do I want to, where do I want to be, right?
Right.
And it's gonna take some work to get there. Obviously, it's not overnight, depending on where you are. But yeah, no, I've had from firms on here that I've met. They have a COO, COO, CMO, CFO. Like I think they still practice and do what they want, but
Yeah.
they have a
Yeah.
full C-suite.
Yeah, and
Um,
I tell people, I said, a lot of times, like, I think you can get into million, multi-million without a C-suite. I know you can, um,
but sure,
because there is a formula for getting you into the money, right? But when you start looking at pulling yourself out of the business, you have to start being strategic about who's going to do those things if you're not going to do them. And that's where you start looking at, your evolution, right? So
yeah.
you can make a lot of money without a C-suite, but how much of that, you know, how much of that are you still holding on to? Right. And there are also steps to that, right? You might not need a COO, you might need an office manager, right? You might need a firm administrator. There might be things that you need before you get to a point where you need a COO, right?
And don't throw
Um,
titles around.
yeah. Fortunately, we have fractional services now, which, is something kind of,
Excellent.
newish in the work world, where people can come in and say, well, we're an outside agency, but we can function as your chief marketing, officer, part-time, because we also have 10 other clients that we're doing it for. And that can help bridge a gap for a lot of people. And sometimes it could take you a really long way. So,
Yeah,
the vision doesn't have to be, I have a full C-suite and we've got offices all over the country, and we have hundreds of people working for us, but it can be if that's what you want, right?
sure. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, fractional. Yeah, CMOs, CFOs, CEOs. There's a great gas where you don't need that person on your payroll.
Yeah.
And when you're throwing out titles like that, you know, those can be expensive folks to bring in house. So,
Right.
and then you got to think about too. I know lots of firms that have neither one of those folks necessarily, but they're still 8-figure firms. They got there somehow. But you got to think about the culture, and if you're the leader, the visionary of the business, or you want to kind of pull back from that a little bit and have these other folks come in to take the reins. What's your role going to be if you had a CEO? How
Right.
do you make sure you're not stepping on each other's toes? I
That
know
is very important.
at Array we have a president, and I have my business partner who acts as CEO, and so it's kind of like, okay, well, how we clearly define those roles, and we've had my president, who's like hiring and operations and all good stuff. He's responsible for the work we put out. Has had to kind of push my partner out a little bit, say, "Hey, get out of the way." So, um, so you gotta think about that kind of stuff too as you want to
Yeah.
grow. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say my partner and I did some things really well. And one of the things that we did really well was we each sort of had certain responsibilities. So we kind of divvied it up. So we were making decisions together, but one or the other of us had to sort of be the last word on things. And we sort of divided up those areas. Uh, One of the mistakes I made is I still was doing too much. Like we really needed to, if I were to go back and do it again, um, I would I would definitely hire more people to take on some of the roles I was taking on instead of kind of getting into that overwhelm. But I didn't have mentors. I had uh, attorneys who were mentors in subject matter,
Mm,
right? So they were helping
mm,
me become a better lawyer,
not
but I
business.
didn't have many sort of mentoring or coaching in how to run a business. And I just kind of thought, since I had been working for 15 years and all these professional services businesses, I would just know automatically how to run a business. That was my delusional thinking. And so it took a lot of education to sort of figure that out and go, okay, here's what I didn't know that I didn't know, like you said, right? And I tell people that if I could tell Davina back then anything, it would be like to ask for help and hire people to coach you and to help you, because then you can overcome this. Instead, I was like, burnout. I let myself, I mean, I think I gained like 30 pounds. I'd go home every night and drink wine because I was so exhausted mentally and emotionally because I was trying to wear too many hats and be too many things to too many people.
Mm.
And if I had known, like, if realized there were resources available for somebody to coach me and help me make those decisions I didn't even know that I needed to be making, we would have had a different outcome. Right.
Oh yeah, I mean, coaching has been a blessing for me, and my partner, and throughout a lot of law firms that I know, and a lot of folks that I've gotten to meet through this podcast and through the industry. There's a lot of great people out there, but you got to have a coach. You should
Yeah.
always have a coach, and reach out to different people for different subject matters. And you'd be surprised how many people who are just interested in help, mentor. There's plenty of coaching options out there. But I wanted to get into kind of your program, and for all my ladies out there listening in that could use your help. But again, I know for me, coaching has been massive. Um, but right before we jump into that, the one thing I think that I thought about when you were talking a second ago was just knowing your numbers and not knowing what you don't know. I was at a conference this weekend in Chicago, and know your numbers. Well, I got P&L. We work on it all the time. It's perfect until next month, and then we fix something and do something different. But knowing your numbers, to know what to do. And so one of the exercises we did was percentage of payroll to your revenue, and my percentage was off. I'm at 30%. It should be around 37% to 42% based on this exercise you're doing. So that means I should be hiring. Like we can
Right.
bring in more staff, right? But how do you know that? I didn't know that, and so
Right.
there's so much you
Right.
can get from outside help that can look in that you can't see and say, "Hey, why is this way?" or "Why is that like that? Why didn't you hire this person over here?" And so someone like a coach can help you identify those things and make these decisions quicker and get you to where you want to go so
Right.
much
It really
faster.
is about your ability to move quickly. And when you're the CEO, and I think that's what is a contradiction a lot for lawyers because as lawyers, we're taught to think like a lawyer, and thinking like a lawyer is analytical, it is thoughtful, it is thinking of everything that could go wrong because we're trying to prevent something going wrong for our clients. So we're trying to think of every eventuality so we can protect our clients from the worst of the worst, right? So then when we start applying that to our own business, this is the problem. We get into overthinking. Everything becomes on everything is on the same level of importance when it comes to making decisions about our business because we're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to make any mistakes. I can't think through the eventualities of all of this." And so a lot of that is learning how to think like a CEO, which is moving a little bit more quickly, making an educated guess, taking some risks, taking some gambles, and making instead of worrying about making the right decision, learning how to make those decisions right for you, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, every decision you make is leading you to where you are meant to be, and to get metaphysical on you. Um, but we were talking about coaching, and I will
Yes.
say this, I've had a number of coaches. So I learned one thing from one coach and something else from another coach and something else from another coach. So that has been they haven't all been at the same time because I think it's a little hard to follow multiple people at the same time. But
Yeah.
I've had but I, I had I my very first coaching experience was a large group coaching, kind of like what you see some of these programs. There's a lot of lights and music and you get excited and you sign up. You go to the sales call at the back of the room and you sign up.
Signing for
And
more stuff.
I had that experience and I wasn't ready for that coaching program, but I learned a lot of it changed me in a lot of ways, which is really what you're looking for is changes in you because then that's going to help you grow your business, right? But that led me to a private coach. And that coach was a little bit more woo woo. And it was what I needed at the time. I needed somebody to
Mm.
sort of to get me to loosen my grip, my fear that things were going to go wrong and my anxiety around making the wrong decisions and here I was this perfectionist lawyer who's overthinking everything and so I got somebody who was like, okay, we need to chill, right? And she gave me a lot of tools to use to help me manage my mindset.
Mm.
And then my next coach was somebody who really was a business person and somebody who really helped me kind of dial in on understanding leverage and the importance of leverage and different business principles, right? So it's not always just one and done kind of thing. People have different, and then that doesn't even count all the people that I just listen to and follow through the years and get ideas from. So I think it's being open to those experiences and not being so focused on, you know, did I get the exact number of hours I was supposed to get and check this off? Did I have a transformation in that experience? Because every one of those coaching experiences, there were things I didn't get that I thought I was going to. But ultimately, I got what I needed and didn't know that I needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I first started my own business, I was pretty young, 23, 24. Well, I had rented a space from a gentleman that I met at a networking event a few times, and he's like, "Kevin, I heard you looking for just a small office." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I got plenty of office space. You give me a couple $100 a month, you can." And he had like a beautiful Class A building with conference rooms and kitchen. He's like, "You have access to all that stuff,
Nice.
but get your little office." It's like I felt like I was on top of the world. But yeah, so he was kind of like a mentor. I would talk to him about business. He had hundreds of employees, ran a financial planning company, and I actually ran into him not too long ago. Joe Counts, very successful. And one day I was in his office. I was like, he's like, yeah, I'm hiring. I need to find me a new coach. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I always have a few coaches, and I change them, or sometimes I have to find a new one. Like I just get to a point where I need to explore something new. And I was young, so I was just like, I never even had a coach for one, and so the concept was foreign to me. And here he is, basically looking for another coach, and I was like, well, how's the one coach doing? Oh, they're great, they're awesome, but now I need the next step. I need something else that I don't have. And so I always held on to that and was like, okay, that's interesting.
That is interesting, right?
And he
And
was paying thousands, and I was at the time
yeah.
like, holy gosh.
Well, and it's mind blowing when you meet somebody who has, 100 employees or whatever, and then you realize they have a coach. You're like, why do you need a coach? You already know what you're doing because look at everything you're doing. And but we know in the coaching world when you have had a coach and when you coach others, you understand the value of having sort of that advisor who can give you a different perspective, a new way to think of things. It's really about being open minded and saying, I don't have all the answers and I can't be the best person for every job in my business because, I'm like I'm not a bookkeeper. I know how I worked as a bookkeeper once. I know I'm not a good bookkeeper. Like I have to have a bookkeeper, right? But there's a little bit of hubris that comes along when you're highly educated and really intelligent lawyer and you think to yourself, but if I could do everything if I just had enough time, I could figure
Yeah.
it out if I just had enough time. Well, here's the secret. You're never going to have enough time. And also you're probably not the best person for every job in your business. In fact, you're probably the best person for maybe one job in your business, maybe two jobs in your business. And then there's somebody else out there who is smarter, better, faster uh, than you are. And that's okay. Like, don't be threatened by that. Invite that in to say, I really want the best team. I really want other people, other brains in here besides mine, because while, I may be a really smart person, I know there are other people out there who are real, much better in what it is. I'm a professionally trained copywriter. I have a writing degree. And
I
one
can
of
hire you
the
to work for me.
things, well, yeah,
Do
one of
some
the
SEO
dangers
content.
is, one of the dangers is if you're good at something, you tend to do it because you're good at it. But I hire copywriters. I spend a lot of money on copywriters. I hire copywriters for different aspects of copy because there are people that are passionate about it who love it. I just met with somebody and we were talking about emails and she goes, I love to write emails. I'm like, oh, good, because I'm over it. Right. And so even though I'm really good at it, I'm always looking for people who are better than me because, we're always working on the marketing and that's not what I want to be doing in my business. I want structures and support set up to help me with the marketing aspect of my business. And I think that's where you need to be honest with yourself that there are other people who are better than you and you really don't need to take the time to learn how to use WordPress. Just hire somebody to do your website, right? Like that's the truth of it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm at the point where I don't want to be the best at anything. Like, just I like
You
when
and
I
everybody
find someone
else.
like I love when I find someone like, man, they're really good at that. Awesome, bring them on board and let's
Uh,
see their work, and
Yeah, you wanna be
they
the
can do
best
it
at
so much better.
attracting the best people,
Yeah.
and whether that's and I often tell people, like, think of we get the idea around our marketing, and we wanna attract our ideal client. Everybody's heard client avatar, ideal client, wanna attract our ideal client, and so once people wrap their mind around, they're like, "Okay, great, we're gonna put this message out, we're gonna attract our ideal client." But we never think to ourselves, well, we need to attract our ideal employees, our ideal team. How
Mm.
do we do that? What is the way that we can automate that process and attract those people and putting more thought in it instead of just like waiting for that person to answer our ad and this is our choice in the world. Is this two people who answer our ads? Do I want A or B? We don't think, well, what other ways can we be attracting people to us?
Oh yeah, that's huge. I mean, if you have the right culture and that's under control and you're attracting the right people, scaling and growing and more clients is a walk in the park if you can get that figured out. Um,
What do you think? I'm curious. What do you think, like, was a key linchpin for you guys in creating the culture that attracts people to work for you?
That's a good question. So at first, backing up, and I know you have a meeting here soon, so we'll try to be quick. I mean, for us, it was like a lot of things we're talking about. Like we didn't think a mission statement or core values or any of the stuff. We just thought it was fluffy stuff. Like no one cares. No one's going to read it. So we skip it because we're just business owners. We want to roll and move forward. And
Right.
that's no one cares. And it took groups that we were in and mentors and coaches and things like that to say, hey, what you guys don't have this? Well, we kind of have it in a document somewhere. And
Yeah.
and again, I just didn't think it mattered. Who cares? Like, you know, that's emotional stuff. Who cares? Let's just make money. Let's go.
Ooh,
We had to
feelings.
step back and go, okay, let's go through this exercise. And we put time into it. And it became like a passionate project for me and my partner, like to where we worked on it for years, like making a little bit better and adjusting them. And they haven't changed in probably 5, 6 years. But we have core values, we have our mission, we have our vision. My whole team knows everything through and through. The core values are used on a daily basis for kudos points to team peer shared. And we recognize monthly winners with bonuses, quarterly winners with like really expensive like trophies that get shipped off to them where they are. So it's just worked into what we do now, so much so that it's clear. There's a clear vision. They know
Right.
what leadership. They know me and my partner through and through, who we are.
And
And when I get
you can tell when people come in to interview with you if they're aligned with your values or not, because it's just so intrinsic now in the organization that when somebody comes to interviews with you, you're like, yeah, this person's not going to fit. And I can identify the piece that's missing, right? Whether
absolutely.
that's, integrity or excellence or whatever it is, right? So
And
yeah,
skill
thanks
is
for answering that.
like the lowest thing. We don't care. Skill is maybe how we find someone originally, but then they're not hired on skill necessarily at all. So,
Yeah.
and then I don't interview anybody at this point, but my team will not let anyone through the door that messes with that culture because it messes
Right.
with them. And so that's when
That's
you got it
excellent.
good. Now, growing it, scaling it, it's a different story, but important things. So, but the last few minutes we have, I just want to, you know, again, how can people best connect with you? What kind of your ideal client for you would be that might be listening out there, or someone can refer you.
Yeah. I love to work with women law firm owners, as we've talked about, and really we're looking at not people who are probably just starting out or thinking it. Although there's certainly some tools available for them, but really those who are they've started their business, they've been scaling that six-figure ladder, and they're they're functioning kind of as a solo. And even if they've hired some people, they're struggling to sort of get to that next level. And what it takes to get to six figures or multiple six figures is different than what it takes to get to seven figures. And so we're really looking for those. I do have some clients who come to me, they've started out at they're at seven figures. Maybe they're in a field like personal injury where a couple of big cases, you're at seven
Yeah.
figures, but they don't have the structure in place for
Mhm.
a law firm business that they can leave without worrying something is going to fall through the cracks. And that is leave for vacation, long vacations, leave for to take care of a family member, leave if you're ill, like all the things,
The
right?
lunch.
And so it's really about creating that infrastructure so that you have a business entity, a wealth generating machine that operates without your day to day involvement. And that's the kind of clients that I like to help. And we do that through uh, private coaching and through group coaching programs. So there's something for sort of everyone, no matter, like, if there's some people who are already a million or closer to a million and already have some things in place, then they might be a better fit for sort of the private coaching.
Mm.
That's a more custom experience. And then some who are just kind of climbing that 6-figure ladder and they're not yet at the 500,000, they're needing some support. The group coaching program is great for that. You still get a weekly interaction with me. So it's not something like you hire me and then I just send you off in a corner to do the homework. So those are the option. And thank you for asking.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have a great program, very focused. So my women lawyers out there, reach out. and connect with her. And she's got a quiz on her website that you can take to kind of figure out what's going to be best for you. But wrapping it up is, yeah, you can go over 7 figures real quick and easy and have no infrastructure. I see that all the time. Or you
Yeah.
can stay in 6 figures for 10, 20 years and never break that ceiling. So
Right.
we need help, people. I've hired tons of coaches and experts, and that's what it took. So reach out, connect. If you got any questions, please ask me. If you want me to connect you to, I'm happy to do that. Davina, thank you so much for sharing today. Great conversation, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been my pleasure.
All right, everyone, get out there, grow your law firms.